we get quite wedded to the way we've always done things.
Yeah.
You know, there is a place for MCQs. There's obviously a place for kind of summative written exams. There's a place for large scale OSCEs, but you know, essentially with only the added element of doing it on a computer, we're roughly doing the same things we've been doing for the last 34 years, if not longer.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Test Community.Network. I hope you're all safe and well. My name's Tim Burnett. So this week, we're going to kind of explore the idea of using AI within the kind of ePortfolio space. Now, I know through my use with apprenticeships, the role that ePortfolios have on that process is it's a very, very time-consuming approach to assessment, very, very rich. I think it's a great one that helps build on kind of people's expertise. But as you'll find in David's interview, David Lay, he talks about the burdens that it has and some examples of people that just kind of given up or paused their education because of just, I can't face another ePortfolio. So David's talking about AI, its potential within the space, particularly in the medical space, and he brings his knowledge to that. So we'll come to David's interview in a second. I suppose the one thing that stood out for me this week, I'll be honest, is so the TBA committee, which is the Technology-Based Assessment Committee from ATP, they did a webinar about the existential threat of cheating and AI and cheating. And this is a topic I covered back in April. I did a webinar, kind of, it was invite only because there was some quite dangerous tech that I developed in there. And I'm still trying to keep all that kind of stuff under wrap, but you know, a bit more was shared as part of this webinar. So I wanted to kind of highlight a few things to you. So in the space of the webinar that took 50 odd minutes, I'm going to add this to stage and put myself there. I was able to build an app using Lovable, and this is something I've done before. When I first did this back in April, it was when I did the webinar. It took me about 3 days to do this. I'm going to switch to this video. So, but this is called vibe coding. So this is where you use chat, natural language to kind of chat things. You can kind of see the code, me chatting here. Very little. Most of this text here is the AI unit itself, but this is Lovable. So hopefully you heard that. So this is where it's giving me answers to the questions. And I think I got that one wrong, actually. Probable events was not the right one. But the idea is that this app that I created very quickly, 45 minutes, like I said, a lot of it doing this thing, it was taking the screenshots of the content and taking that information, taking it off to LLM, giving me the answer. Now, this is something so easy you can put in line as part of your process. So I just wanted to kind of flag that. I've written an article about it, and I'll share that in the post as well. I'm going to stop there now, shut up. Yeah, I think it's something that really needs to be on your radar if it's not already. Other stuff I want to share with you just before getting to the interview with David. So I've done a big update to the Test Community Network. So if you've not been to the Test Community Network, you can go to testcommunity.network. You can subscribe for free, Test Community Network. And you will receive an email through full of information from the week events that are coming up, etc. You know, kind of really useful stuff on it. Obviously, you can visit the website as part of that process as well. And on the website, we've got events that are coming up. So ones I want to kind of raise to you are great. I've got a webinar on today, 23rd. I think it's later on in the day. So if you're getting this about lunchtime, UK time, you should still be able to sign up to that. Alta got their conference going on. It's an in-person one. Talview have got their scaling certifications program, so they're talking about their agentic tools there. We've got Respondus, so we've got a webinar on, and there is another one coming up soon as well. So there was another one I was going to point out to you, I can't remember what it is. But anyway, you have a delve in there, see what you fancy. In terms of the knowledge base, obviously we've got my article that I'm going to be talking about in terms of cheating apps on there as well, but we've got skills white papers come out for the UK V levels, which is a new item in there as well. Lots of podcast items in there as well. Some really good rich stuff this week. And we've got inclusion profiles as well, and sitting guilds being sold to people's certificates. That's the kind of big news there. So it's worth checking that out. The other thing I want to add is collections. So collections are a big long list that I've created of. So I've got something like 600 odd marketplace providers in the space. And what I've done is I've created one which is about AI powered solutions. Now, this will probably grow a little bit more, because what I did was did some big analysis, and there's a couple I missed in there as well. People have been reaching out to me on LinkedIn to add those in. So you've got 107 on here. These are all providers that are providing AI-based technology. What is quite useful about all this is that you can use the deep research tool within the Test Community Network website to delve into these further. So if you've got a particular need around a particular AI function, you're looking at AI authoring or something like that, then you can put that in a deep research request, and it will go off and it will trawl through all those 107 organizations, looking at the content which is in the LLM, and then when it finds ones that are most probable, it will go off and do a more deeper dive on 3 of those organizations and give you a big long report at the back of it. I am going to bring out some more in-depth collections as we go, but another one I added in today was about similarity checking and plagiarism tools and AI as well. So if you're interested in that, then there are 25 items in that collection. Anyway, so that's the Test Community Network website stuff. We're going to get on to the interview today with David now. So this is me in conversation talking about ePortfolios for the medical-based assessment with David Lay. Here we go. Thank you for joining me. Are you well?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not too bad. And we're going to talk about medical-based assessment today. You're a kind of a bit of an expert on this area. We're going to kind of look at ePortfolios and your kind of experience. For those that don't know you, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to the Test Community Network?
Yeah, sure. So I'm David Lay. I am currently the founder of a company called SkillSync AI, and I have a lot of experience in the postgrad and undergraduate medical education sphere, especially delivering assessment software and developing assessment software for both the formative and summative sides of those medical assessments.
Excellent. And for people who don't know how kind of assessment works typically within the UK kind of medical space, do you want to kind of give us a bit of an introduction, a brief overview?
Yeah, broadly speaking, you boil it down to summative and formative assessments. Your formative assessments are broadly done on an ePortfolio platform, which are things like work-based placed assessments and daily logs. A undergraduate student would have to do that from about the 3rd year in when they're on placement, and you have to maintain that through all of your postgrad. So that's your specialty training. In terms of your summative assessments, you've got probably the most famous ones are OSCEs. They're observed procedures, so station-based approach with say 3 or 4 minutes on each station with either a very knowledge-based scenario or a procedure that you have to show, and then you've got your kind of classic written summative exams where you do them throughout your undergraduate, probably more frequently, but they're a big part of your postgrad as well, and you eventually have to go through either summative or semi-summative exam to pass to do what we call a CCT, which is your final test before you become a consultant and start practicing as a consultant specialist.
Okay, so there's lots of different, I suppose, different assessment methods in there. Some have strengths, some have weaknesses. I was at the Royal College of Anaesthetists CPD conference last week talking about AI and I suppose its potential there. And a lot of people were talking about item generation, which I think has legs. But do you think there's some potential for AI to support more in that kind of portfolio-based activity, or are there some weaknesses that you think exist currently with the portfolio approach?
Yeah, I mean, having worked on ePortfolios for a long time and had been developing one, I think the big blocker in terms of people using portfolios is generally that they don't see much value in using it. It's something they have to do. It's something they have to do on a daily basis, and it boils down to things like how many case-based discussions or formative assessments have you done, rather than how good are those formative assessments. It's very difficult to do that competency-based training because it really relies on you being able to sit down with somebody and have a conversation about what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, across a broad assessment platform that the NHS doesn't really have time to allow trainees and students to do. In terms of things like item banking and creation of questions, I think it's a perfectly useful method to use AI for that, but it's kind of like putting a we talk about electric cars moving forward in the future in terms of how we're going to move forward. It would be like getting your electric car pulled by a horse. We're not thinking about how we're going to start using some of this new technology in new ways. There's a lot of space with AI to think more kind of passively about how we gather that kind of information and use it. One of the big blockers for me in terms of an ePortfolio is they're dense in terms of how people want to use them. An assessment strategy from a lot of medical educators and medical education organizations are very dense, and ultimately it's not the doctor's main goal to do ePortfolios or study these things. So they have a job of treating patients, and I think we should make that life a lot easier if we can.
So it's like more of a chore, isn't it? To keep that information up to date, to capture it, and it's not always kind of translatable easily, kind of convertible into that ePortfolio space. You've got to write up reflections, that kind of thing. It must be a bit of a kind of a burden then for the candidate, and they must see no value in that process as well.
I spoke to a GP who is training now, who's about 4 years into his training, and he said he postponed his medical training after 5 years of expensive university because he couldn't face another ePortfolio. And there is a statistic around that says 60 to 65% of people don't see the point in doing an ePortfolio. The value is there if it's captured correctly, but you wouldn't necessarily capture something correctly if you don't see the value in it, if you see what I mean. So it's a bit of a catch-22. If you can have those open, honest reflections, amazing. And you can, there are people who are very, very good at doing those things. But if you're not having a decent conversation with, say, a supervisor at the end of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, what's the point of doing in your ePortfolio? Because they're just going to look at the numbers on it. A big area we've been working on is alignment to curriculum items, which the GMC brought in a few years ago in terms of what they called the general practice capabilities, a much more open approach to how you assess medical education. So instead of saying you need X number of hours in Y and you need to get X number of cases in Z, they're much more broad topics. So COVID is a very good example of this. You might write a learning outcome or a key capability that says you need to be competent in being able to diagnose a pandemic case, for example. That's not how many cases you've seen. It's are you competent in doing that? Now that comes up with issues because it's very difficult to evidence that broadly without quantifying it. And people want to quantify things, and in the assessment space we love to quantify things. We love a graph, we love a number, and I think AI does give us the opportunity to categorize things. I mean, the first use of AI 20-30 years ago was categorizing numbers and things like that, and we broadly use that in the large language models. But it's now in a very exciting space where a very formative assessment can be categorized against a very open curriculum and allow people to see where they're fitting their kind of daily tasks in and what they need to focus on. And I think that's really where the AI gap can be bridged, can start bridging that kind of lack of competency-based education that we see across the medical area.
So if I get this right, then what you're saying is that a doctor can capture their activity, their evidence, and their interaction with the patient. And then what you're saying is the AI could then sit alongside that to look at what it is they've done and start to identify areas in the curriculum where that is a good alignment to it. And then could it suggest, if I got that right, if it could suggest other areas, other activities that they could do to try and capture that to show the kind of breadth? Is that where you're going?
That's what we're looking at the moment. So the idea is to kind of rehumanize this a little bit, which sounds a bit silly when we're talking about AI and robots, really. But to remove some of the admin work of tagging and coming up with assessments and thinking about how they fit in. If we can remove some of that element, what it really boils down to is, as you mentioned earlier, reflection, which is reflecting on what you've done and being able to have those honest reflections with somebody who has the experience of it. So within the medical education area, that's your educational and clinical supervisors or your heads of school or deans of medicine or wherever you're pitching it. But somebody you can have an open, honest conversation with where the alignment is done, but they probably haven't also read the curriculum either. So, you want to be able to have a brief look at the portfolio about where they fit and what kind of learnings they've got, but then have that conversation on it as well. So you could have it. So, and how we've set up our system in SkillSync is you write, say, an assessment, you press a button and it suggests where it might fit in the curriculum. You send that off and you can have a grading scale against it very simply. We've just got a 1 to 6 Likert scale. And the idea of that is you're judging somebody on the very specific thing that they've done. So you might not have an expert judging you on your assessment. So you don't want to ask them to say where it fits within the curriculum. So the AI suggests that for you. Then you can start mapping that against the curriculum in terms of averaging that out. And once you have that conversation with a supervisor, very, very easy to go, you've got an average of a 4 here, you've got an average of a 5 here. And what we're not doing is completely removing the human aspect from it. We want to empower people to kind of understand what they're being judged against a little bit more effectively, and then open up that kind of more reflective approach when having that conversation later in the year. And you can imagine that where that can build to, you can have things like an AI suggested area where you might need to work on. I mean, if you get 6 months into your training, you're not particularly good at something, it would suggest you might focus on a particular area of the curriculum. We've left it very, very boxed in, so it's not off asking ChatGPT or Claude thousands of things. It's only analysing against what you've input and what kind of agent we've set it up as. So it is effectively passing it through the person who wrote the curriculum and, say, a very, very good educational supervisor to give you some advice on it. But we are always saying the person responsible is you. You're responsible for your own learning. This is just to make your understanding of your learning a little bit more effective and give you more flexibility in learning as well. I think we've all been in situations where we can, think we've been put down a path where we might not be, that effective at sitting down and writing an exam, but we would be much more effective on having a conversation with people on the ground and gathering that information up.
I think it's where we're going with all this is the kind of direction of more authentic conversations and more authentic, I suppose, reality-based activities. And one of let's say, multiple choice examination, it's not to say it's an improper way of testing, but the authenticity from the candidate's reflection within it's quite limited, and the value that they get from it, they get information as to this is where he's strong in this area and not strong in other, but there's potentially more value from a conversation and feedback that might be generated from that authentic conversation off the back of a portfolio-based activity. Do you, in terms of your, I suppose, what's in your platform now to support this, and what's your kind of vision for the future? What would you like to see in to make it this, I suppose, this whole experience much more valuable? Because just before we were talking, weren't we? We were saying about one of the drivers for cheating is the immediacy of trying to attain an assessment, but also the lack of value you might get from it. You're more likely to not cheat if there's a huge amount of value from that assessment process. What's your roadmap then? What's your kind of thinking?
Yeah, so currently we're MVPing, and what we've really aimed at is, as I say, kind of simplifying down that initial assessment idea. So speaking to a few GPs and a few specialists, what we've developed initially is a daily log where you type in what you've done in the day, or you can voice note it in, press a button, and it will tell you what kind of assessments you've got based against the assessment strategy of whatever organization you're working against, because even those areas are quite cumbersome in terms of the different types of assessments. It's not as simple as formative and summative, although you probably could boil it down to those. Yeah. Personally, I think we've kind of overcomplicated that assessment strategy that we're putting in. A lot of these ePortfolios have got a lot of information that isn't necessarily used further down the line. And it's not to do with the software, and it's just one of these things that spiraled over time. And why would you ask them to fill in 8 tick boxes if we're not using any of that information further down the line? It doesn't seem like it makes much sense if you're capturing it for no reason. So the idea of that is to kind of look at that more passive approach to learning, all those things that you take in subconsciously or consciously, but you don't necessarily write them down immediately. So if you can get them to write down or just decompress at the end of the day, you might realize that there is a work-based assessment or a very specific dots or something within those medical education assessments that you'd missed just by kind of writing a daily log and asking the AI to analyze it. And then we've obviously got the categorization element. That's open and free. We want to keep that free so that people can understand their curriculum a bit more. The broader portfolio is we're hoping to have more of a kind of business to customer model. But eventually what we want is kind of a simplified ePortfolio that encompasses this AI technology that we've seen with that categorization element. It really brings that authenticity back to learning and allows people to take control of their learning and finds value in their learning. I think we've mentioned that value proposition a few times, and being able to direct your own learning and understand your own learning from your own portfolio is really, really important. I mean, where do I want it to go kind of over the next few years? I think I was just telling you this before we started, so I'll just tell the story again. But I damaged my finger and I had to go to A&E, and they were talking about having body cams on there, and I think that's such an interesting tool to use because we think of it in terms of safety. You know, police use those things, and obviously at the moment there's so much data that goes into that. It'd be very difficult to kind of download a 12-hour shift and say AI sift through this. But if that information is already being used and that patient safety stuff is already being addressed, then you could turn that on during a patient interaction and analyze that from so many different data sources, audio, visual, just different things in the room, as well as your own reflection on it. And you're then being assessed on what you did without necessarily having to think about the assessment strategy that somebody who's never been through a medical degree and a postgraduate degree has gone through, and they're very, very heavy. They're 60, 70, 80 page PDFs just for 1 year of those. So that really opens up these ideas that you could passively take in information and then be analyzed on it and have that conversation on where you could improve, where you're strong, and gives again you the trainee or the user in this case just the opportunity to think about what you're going to do next and what kind of situations you want to put yourself in.
Yeah. Sounds exciting stuff. So you say you're MVP at the moment. You're kind of developing stuff out. You're open to people getting in touch.
Absolutely,
yeah. I think it always helps, doesn't it, at these stages particularly. So we'll include your details in the show notes, so people can find out more information. And keep us posted on your progress. I personally think, when it comes to kind of the examination process, we need to think broader, don't we, than the kind of standard summative activities. But like you say, these things need to have value, and they need to be effortless, don't they? They need to be almost embedded as part of your daily practice and not a chore. I think that's.
I think so, and you've just mentioned it again. I mean, I think one of the things we do is we get quite wedded to the way we've always done things.
Yeah.
There is a place for MCQs. There's obviously a place for kind of summative written exams. There's a place for large scale OSCEs, but essentially with only the added element of doing it on a computer, we're roughly doing the same things we've been doing for the last 34 years, if not longer.
Yeah.
And with technology, as we've seen kind of moving forward, people get very, very caught up on how technology is going to help people cheat. But, my dad's famous phrase was, well, you're never always going to have a calculator in your pocket. And it turns out I've always got a calculator in my pocket, if not just on my wrist, and now it's even, more effective with AI and things. So it's about teaching people and allowing this kind of new wave of technology to dictate how we assess people rather than penalizing them for using it, I think.
Yeah, we're going to have to work in partnership with this stuff. We're going to need to know, it's like mental arithmetic and stuff like that. You need to know to be able to do these things, but you need to know how to use the tools that are going to aid you to get the accuracy, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely,
Thank you very much. I much appreciate it. I do appreciate your time, and keep us posted. I look forward to hearing more news about your updates.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Cheers, David. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for that, David. That was excellent. Really fascinating stuff, because I do think from the solutions that I use for my portfolio work, I think there's a significant opportunity for some enhancement there. And as David says, people are in this kind of practice process. They're busy people. We need to start taking away the administration. Now, there are technologies that they're using, doctors and medical staff are using, using AI to kind of augment and help them with that process. So in terms of their learning, why not kind of be part of that as well? So obviously, if you go in my show notes, you'll see information about that, and you'll see the link to the article about the cheating app stuff as well. But great seeing you, and we'll see you next week for more excellent stuff. Thank you, and bye-bye.